Welcome, everyone. Ready to dive deep into how our brains work and how that can actually help us design better products and services.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating area, and there's so much we can learn from cognitive science to improve how we design.
We're taking inspiration from John Whalen's book, Design for How People Think.
It's a great choice for this deep dive. He manages to make complex neuroscience really practical for designers.
Yeah, he wears two hats, right?
Yeah.
Cognitive scientist and design expert. That's got to be a unique perspective.
Definitely gives him an edge. And he doesn't bog you down with a ton of brain anatomy. Instead, he introduces this framework called the 6 minds of experience.
Okay, the 6 minds. I'm intrigued. Break that down for us.
Well, think about it. Every experience we have, whether it's using an app, navigating a city, or just having a conversation, it feels like one seamless thing.
Right, it's just how we experience the world.
But under the hood, our brains are juggling all these different cognitive processes. Whalen categorizes them into 6. Vision, attention, wayfinding, memory, language, decision-making, and emotion.
Whoa, so much is happening without us even realizing it.
Exactly. And each of these minds relies on different parts of the brain working together. By understanding them, designers can create experiences that feel intuitive and enjoyable because they're aligned with how our brains naturally work.
So it's not just about aesthetics or functionality, but tapping into the way we think.
Exactly. Let's start with vision attention.
Okay, seems simple enough. We see stuff, we pay attention to it. What's the design implication there?
Well, our visual attention is mostly on autopilot. Our brains are wired to immediately notice things that stand out. Like if you're walking down a street, a bright red sign is going to grab your attention more than a plain gray wall.
Right, it just pops out.
Yeah, that's visual pop-out. And designers use that all the time in interfaces. Think about notification badges on your phone, those little red circles.
Yeah.
They're designed to exploit our visual attention system.
Ah, clever. It reminds me of that example from the book about designing a security system, for a busy environment like a train station.
Yeah, that's a great example. Imagine you're a security guard watching a wall of screens, tons the camera feeds. It's overwhelming.
Easy to miss something important in all that visual noise.
Exactly. So they designed the system to use visual pop-out to help the guards prioritize. If something potentially dangerous happens, the feed automatically gets larger and brighter.
So it grabs their attention immediately. Smart.
And it's not just security systems. Web designers use things like heat maps, which track where people's eyes move on a page to figure out how to make important things stand out visually.
So you can almost guide the user's attention where you want it to go.
Pretty much. Okay, let's move on to wayfinding.
Ah, that's something we've all struggled with at some point. Getting lost in a mall or a website with terrible navigation.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. Whalen talks about these Tunisian desert ants. They go on these crazy winding paths to find food.
Okay. Ants?
Uh-huh.
How does that relate to wayfinding?
Well, even if you pick up the ant and move it to a totally different spot, it still manages to find its way back to the nest. It uses the sun as a compass.
So even though its journey is all over the place, it has these cues to keep it oriented.
Exactly. And humans are kind of like that too. We need cues and landmarks to navigate, both in the real world and online.
So it's not enough to just provide directions. You have to create a sense of place and provide those reference points that our brains naturally look for.
Right. The book mentions how in the early days of touchscreens, people would try to physically drag a web page with their finger.
Check they were moving a piece of paper.
Yeah, even though it didn't actually work that way, it shows how deeply ingrained our understanding of physical spaces and how we try to apply those metaphors to digital spaces.
It's like our brains are always trying to make sense of the unfamiliar by relating it to what we already know.
Exactly. But that also creates challenges for things like voice interfaces. Like, how do you navigate a voice interface without visual cues? It's still a tricky area.
It is. Okay, let's shift gears to memory. We all know our experiences shape our expectations, but how does that factor into design?
Well, our brains are incredibly efficient. They don't store every tiny detail of everything we experience.
That's a good thing. Otherwise, our heads would explode.
Right. Instead, our brains create these abstract concepts and stereotypes based on our experiences.
So we're constantly categorizing and simplifying the world around us.
Yeah, and that affects how we interact with new things. Whalen has this exercise where he shows people a picture of an alleyway and then asks them to draw it from memory.
Okay, I'm picturing it now. What happens?
People almost always add things that weren't in the original picture. They extend the boundaries based on their assumptions about what an alleyway should look like.
So our memories aren't just passive recordings. We actively reconstruct them based on our expectations.
Exactly. And for designers, that means you need to be aware of the mental models your users already have. Like if you design a button that says happy hour, people's expectations are going to be all over the place based on their past experiences with happy hours.
Some people might be picturing cheap drinks. Others might be picturing fancy cocktails. It all depends on their personal context.
Right. If you don't understand those mental models, your design is going to miss the mark.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk about language. I know words are important, but how does that play into design?
Language is really tied to expertise. The words we use and understand depend on how much we know about a subject.
Like a doctor might use a technical term for a part of the brain. Well, most people would just call it, the brain.
Exactly. And using the wrong language can instantly make people feel lost or even distrustful.
Like if a website bombards you with jargon you don't understand, you're not going to feel very confident using it.
Nope. And on the flip side, if you oversimplify things for someone who's an expert, they're going to feel patronized. Finding that balance is key.
So it's about speaking the user's language, meeting them where they are. Okay, let's wrap up with decision making. We like to think we're rational, but emotions play a big role, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of times, we're not actually making the best possible decision. We're just choosing something that's good enough.
Satisficing, right? I've heard that term.
Yeah, that's what economists call it. We have limited time and energy, so we often take shortcuts in our decision making.
Which is why those high-pressure sales tactics work sometimes.
Yeah.
They wear you down until you just give in.
Exactly. Wayland argues that designers need to understand the emotional drivers behind decision making. He talks about this framework called appeal, enhance, awaken.
Okay, I'm curious. Break that down.
So appeal is about those surface level things that draw us in, like a sleek design or a cool feature. Enhance is about how the product or service actually makes our lives better, like saving us time or simplifying a task.
And awaken is about connecting to those deeper values and aspirations.
Exactly. Like maybe a fitness app helps you not just lose weight, but also discover a love for running and feel more confident in yourself. That's tapping into the awaken level.
It's about more than just functionality. It's about meaning and purpose.
Precisely. By considering all three levels, designers can create products and services that resonate with users on a much deeper level.
Okay, we've had a fantastic overview of Wayland's 6 Minds framework, but I'm eager to explore how we actually put this knowledge into practice.
Let's get practical. How do we actually use this 6 Minds stuff to design better things?
Yeah, good question. We've talked theory. What about real-world application?
Wayland's a big advocate for something called contextual inquiry. Basically, you go out and observe people actually using products and services in their natural environment.
Like instead of just asking them what they want, you watch them in action.
Exactly. Whether it's their home, workplace, or wherever they normally use the product, it's way more insightful than just asking them questions in a lab.
Why is that?
Well, memory is really tied to context. Like you might not remember every detail of your morning commute until you're actually on the train.
Ah, so you're capturing those in-the-moment thoughts and behaviors that people might not even be aware of.
Right. And anyone can do it. You don't need to be a psychologist. It's about observation, asking good questions, and paying attention to those subtle cues.
What kind of things should we be looking for?
Wayland breaks it down into a few key areas. First, the artifacts in their environment. What tools are they using? What's on their desk? What notes have they written to themselves?
So like if someone's desk is covered in sticky notes, maybe that tells you something about their need for organization.
Could be. Then look at how they communicate and collaborate with others. Are they constantly emailing? Do they prefer video calls? That can tell you a lot about how to design features for collaboration.
What about when things go wrong? Like when they run into an unexpected problem or interruption?
Those moments are gold. How do they react? Do they get frustrated easily? Do they have workarounds? Understanding their touch points can help you design solutions that make their lives easier.
So it's not just about watching what they do, but understanding the why behind their actions.
Exactly, and that's where the 6 Minds come back in. During the interview, you're constantly asking yourself, what's grabbing their visual attention? How are they navigating the space? What language are they using? What assumptions are they making?
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. How do you organize all that information?
Wayland suggests using Post-it notes. Write each observation on a separate note, then group them by the 6 Minds.
So you might have a note that says, user struggled to find the save button, and you put that under wayfinding.
Exactly. Then you look for patterns and themes. Which design elements are causing confusion? Which ones are working well?
This all sounds great, but some people might say contextual interviews are too time-consuming or expensive.
It's a fair point. But think about the cost of launching a product that nobody wants because you didn't do your research. Upfront investment in research can save you a lot of headaches down the line.
It's about being proactive rather than reactive. And you said anyone can do it, right?
Yep, you just need an open mind, good listening skills, and empathy for the people you're designing for.
Okay, so we've done our contextual interviews. We've gathered all this juicy data. Now what? How do we turn it into design decisions?
That's where the appeal, enhance, awaken framework comes in. Remember, we're not just building things, we're crafting experiences.
Right. We talked about how appeal is about grabbing attention, enhance is about making things better, and awaken is about connecting to deeper values.
Exactly. Whalen argues that by considering all three levels, we can create designs that are truly meaningful to people.
Can you give us some concrete examples? Like, how would you apply that to, say, a fitness app?
Sure. At high appeal level, you might focus on a visually stunning interface, maybe with bright colors and cool graphics. You'd want to highlight the app's unique features, like maybe it uses AI to personalize workouts.
So you're making it look good and showcasing what makes it special.
Right. Then, for enhance, you'd focus on features that make it easy to track progress, set goals, and stay motivated. Maybe it integrates with other health apps or provides social support.
You're not just giving them a tool, you're creating a supportive environment that helps them reach their goals.
Exactly. And for awaken, you might encourage users to reflect on why they're working out in the first place. Maybe the app helps them discover a new activity they love, or connect their fitness goals to their overall well-being.
It's about more than just burning calories. It's about personal growth and finding meaning in movement.
Exactly. That's the power of designing for how people think. We can create things that are not just useful, but truly impactful.
So we've explored the human mind and learned some really cool tools, but how do we actually put this all together into a design process?
A structured process is super important. It helps us go from insights to actual solutions. One common approach is the double diamond model. It has two main phases.
2 diamonds. Tell me more.
So the first diamond is all about understanding the problem. We call it discover and define.
That's where we use the 6 minds in those contextual interviews we talked about, right?
Yeah, exactly. We gather information, figure out what users really need, and nail down the problem we're trying to solve. It's all about empathy and understanding the user's perspective.
Okay, makes sense. What about the second diamond?
That's where we move from understanding to creating. We call it develop and deliver. It's where we brainstorm solutions, build prototypes, test them out, and refine our designs based on feedback.
So the first diamond is about exploring all the possibilities, and then the second diamond is about narrowing down to the best solution.
You got it. And what's fascinating is how those 6 minds insights we gathered can inform every step of that second diamond.
How so? Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say we're designing a new e-commerce website. In our contextual interviews, we noticed that users had a really hard time finding specific products. Too many choices, confusing categories, the whole 9 yards.
Sounds like a classic wayfinding problem.
Exactly. So in the develop phase, we start brainstorming solutions. Maybe we design a better search function that uses natural language processing to understand what people are really looking for.
Or maybe you simplify the navigation, make it more visual and intuitive.
Right. We could even add little visual cues like color coding or banners to help guide people. Then we'd build prototypes and test them with real users, see what works, what doesn't.
So it's all about iteration, testing, and refining based on real-world feedback.
Yep. And that's where our understanding of visual attention, language, and decision-making comes in handy.
Right, because we can use that knowledge to make the experience smoother and more intuitive.
Exactly. We can use visual pop-out to highlight important elements. We can tailor the language to the user's level of expertise. We can streamline the checkout process to reduce cognitive overload.
It's like we're taking all those puzzle pieces from our research and putting them together to create a seamless experience.
That's a great way to put it. And this approach isn't limited to just websites or apps. It can be applied to anything we design, from physical products to services to entire environments.
I remember those early e-commerce sites. They were so clunky and confusing. Don't wonder people got frustrated.
Totally. They weren't designed with the human brain in mind. But thankfully, things are changing. More and more companies are realizing the importance of designing for how people think.
It's a huge opportunity to make technology more user-friendly and impactful.
Absolutely. But it also requires us to advocate for this approach within organizations.
Right, because not everyone's going to be on board right away.
Right.
How do we convince stakeholders who might be resistant to change or skeptical about the value of this research?
One way is to focus on the ROI. Show them how designing for how people think can actually lead to better business outcomes, like increased user engagement, higher conversion rates, happier customers.
It's not just about making things look pretty, it's about making them work better for everyone.
Exactly. Another strategy is to involve stakeholders in the research process. Let them see firsthand how users interact with products, how their decisions impact the experience.
That's a great idea. It makes it much more real and tangible.
It does. So wrapping up, I think the key takeaway here is that designing for how people think isn't just a trend. It's a fundamental shift in how we approach design. It's about creating things that truly serve humanity.
It's about creating technology that empowers people, not frustrates them. And it all starts with understanding the amazing power of the human brain.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a fascinating journey. I hope everyone listening feels inspired to look at the world with a new lens, to consider how design can work in harmony with our minds, to create truly meaningful experiences.